Hello, my name is Zach Rye with Old Man Gaming. Welcome to another Snap Judgment review. I'm very excited with this one. But first, what's a Snap Judgment review if you've never listened before? Well, I think game reviewers nowadays get a little too wrapped up in having to do the 100% or completing the entire game. Sometimes they forget how fun the game is right off the bat. So I play the game for about 5 to 10 hours, and then I'm just trying to tell you whether you will enjoy it right off the bat or not. That, coupled with the fact that I think video games are one of the most subjective forms of art, I'm not going to give you a score to this. I'm going to tell you the overview of what it is, the game or section or whatever, and then I'm going to give you a list of pros and cons of the game, in my point of view, as all reviews are, and then I'll tell you whether I personally will be sticking with it outside of the purposes of this review. One final bonus disclaimer, and that is you're noticing that the review for this says GM mode specifically, and that is because I only play GM mode in the WWE 2K games anymore. Since 2K22, this is really it. This is all I do. This is how I like to play the game, to the point where I don't even know the buttons. I couldn't control the matches or have a match if I wanted to. So today, what I'm going to be specifically reviewing is GM mode, how it sizes up to the previous years, the changes, what it looks like, and how good it is or is not. If you're looking for a complete WWE 2K24 review, I urge you to seek out other places. Specifically, I would go to Assemble's page, or I would check out IGN's review. So what is GM mode in 2K24? GM mode is where you get to be the GM. You take on the day-to-day business efforts of a brand in the WWE universe. You also take on the role of a GM. You can either make a created custom character that can do that, or you take one of the GMs that is already offered to you. There are a huge amount of GMs offered this year. And then on top of that, you then pick a brand. Then you just select whether you're playing against human or CPU opponents. You can have up to 4. And then week to week, you book. There are some options. You set how much you're going to draft, whether it's round robin or snake order, your budget for your initial draft and your initial game. You can also customize the draft pool itself. They did, however, take out legends versus normal free agents, which we'll talk about later, because of a new system. So you now can select whether they are active, meaning they can be drafted. They can pop up via your talent scouts during the match as free agents, all of that stuff. Or whether they are under contract, which means that they are wrestlers that cannot be drafted but will show up in your free agent list. Or local, which I think only turns up as contracts, but they're usually relatively cheaper and they have smaller contract durations. And then you get into it. Each week you get to book a show depending on the difficulty level you put the show at. Most of it standard-wise is normal, and you get to book 3 normal matches and a main event each week with 3 promos, and then the pay-per-views are 5 and 4. You can then go in and spectate, depending on how it works, if you like to watch the matches. You also have to manage your money as far as not just free agents, but booking costs, because every match has a dollar figure amount, as well as logistics. Logistics are completely different this year around. The way logistics works is you get a certain number of assets every so many shows. Those assets allow you to purchase bigger and better venues, road crew, special effects, advertising campaigns, and then coupled with your money as well. In the case of the free agents, there is no longer, if you're a 2K23 player, there is no longer the Legends free agent kind of weekly pool that you would get of random characters. Instead, you have something called talent scouts. What you do is you go in and you spend the talent scouts to make searches for talent, then you can then offer contracts too. However, this costs talent scouts, which you get 5 a week, give or take based on cards, and money. The more specific your search, the more money it costs to search for it, as well as value criteria. If you're searching for big, high-ranked legends, then it costs more. On the subject of the wrestlers themselves, they've also kind of reworked them. There is still a class system. When you're booking, you're trying to book the right classes against each other. Fighters book well with bruisers, giants book well with cruisers, and then specialists book okay with everybody. With that in mind, there is also now a ring. They did away with superstar value. Instead, they have a ring level. This is how well your wrestler knows the ring, how experienced they are in the ring matches, in doing stuff in the ring. That goes up as they do matches or as you assign promo to them. There are also cards called Schooled, which can give instant experience points to these characters. The characters then unlock perks every 5 levels, which I find very interesting. Each perk level gives you a randomized option between 2. So the first perk level will give a match specialization, meaning if this wrestler is in that certain type of match, you get a little bump on your star rating when you're trying to book it. Star rating being the quality of the match. This will allow the wrestler to basically, it'll randomly select 2 matches. You get to pick between the 2. Then, of course, there's also the card system that's still here with a lot more options. The card system meaning you can buy these cards for money, and these cards are able to be played, and the cards have special effects, such as give popularity boosts, veto other GM's wrestlers, bump your logistics up, bump your money up, heal people, all of that. When booking matches, you also have to consider stamina. The wrestler's stamina goes down each match, and the more demanding the match type, the more the stamina drops. Whereas if you rest them or put them in a promo, they get a little stamina back, so you have to do a balancing act. Same with the titles. The titles will give a huge popularity bump to the wrestler with them. And then at the end of each show, it'll tally up how well your shows are. Each show will get a star rating. Each match will get a star rating from I think half star to 5 stars, with halves in between. This ranking depends on a number of factors: whether or not they're classed up correctly, whether or not you place them with a good guy or a bad guy, whether or not there's a title on the line, what the match type is, if there's a match specialty, if there's a card in play, all of that. And then what you're trying to do is get what's called a perfect curve. You want your opening match to be the best and high rated. You want your mid matches to be slightly less or equal to the first match, and the last match, which the last match you also wanted to be high rated. And yeah, that's it. You book against the other people. You get a certain number of fans from how well you booked, and then you get a certain number of money for how you booked as well. And you just try and keep your business afloat while taking fans away from other people. There's also the trophy system still in play. The trophy system basically means there are challenges that you are trying to do overall in the season, aside from just top the ratings. These challenges will give you trophies. When you get 10 trophies, the first person to get 10 trophies goes in the Hall of Fame, and technically that's how you win the mode. Although the mode itself is ongoing. Even once you get to the Hall of Fame, it asks you if you want to wrap this up now or if you want to keep going. I haven't finished my first season because I like to spectate matches, so I cannot tell you exactly how the keeper system works, if there was any changes to it. But in 2K23, when you finish the season, depending on where you finished in the order, you got to choose a certain number of keepers. Everything goes into the draft. You get the same money back while you do keep the cards and all of your fans and whatnot, and then you just keep going. It's a 25-week season, so it's a little bit shorter than the overall season, but basically it's 4 normal shows, and it counts the pay-per-views as a week. So what you're looking at is overall with 25 weeks, you're looking at 5 pay-per-views, and then you're looking at, I cannot do math in my head, so whatever 4 times 5 is, 20 normal shows. I think that's really everything to discuss on what it is in its base level. There's a lot of crunch here. There's a lot of interesting parts and pieces to it. So let's go ahead and get into the pros and cons, because I have a lot and they're very specific. So I always like to start it off positive first, so let's do the pros. First of all, the crunchiness is here that we've all wanted since this mode came back in 2K22. One of the things that they've added this year is you can actually, when negotiating contracts, you get 4 options instead of either just the lowball option or give them what they want when they ask for it. Also, when hiring them on in the first place, you can set exactly what kind of contract you offer, like how many weeks, and it gives you a dollar figure amount on what you're looking at. Before, in the previous games, it was 5 or it was 10 or it was permanent, period. And the permanent was for a full season. Now I can go, I only want to pick this person up for 2 weeks, see how it goes, maybe then hire them on. Or I could say, I want this person for 15 weeks. I can set that contract depending on my money, especially when the email system comes in, which is way better and way better redone. Before, you couldn't get out of an email once you were into it, so you didn't know what other emails were coming, and sometimes you'd spend too much money and you wouldn't have enough money to deal with something else later on. With this, you can back out of any email halfway through it before responding and figure out all the emails before you make decisions, which is really nice. But with the actual contract stuff, when somebody asks you for money, you go, let's talk figures, and you can lowball them, you can offer them what they want, or you can offer them extra for even more weeks, or you can offer them even more for a permanent if you really like what they're doing, which is really nice. They also added trades, which kind of factor into the crunch. We've been wanting this since 2K22. The trades happen at the end of each cycle, so after the first PLE, Premium Live Pay-Per-View, you'll be able to do trades. Trades, you can offer up to 5 superstars to another brand. You can't do it between 2 different brands, you just have to pick one brand, but you can also offer a number of cash and then kind of make the trade. They also have this interesting frustration system in play for when you're trying to trade with a CPU, which is really cool. My next one is kind of a hidden one. It took me a second to figure this one out, but it is you can start your show without titles. Now, in the game last year, you basically, in both the previous iterations of this, when you selected a brand, they made you select your first champions. You couldn't have people earn it. In addition to that, like the belt could get vacated later for a very number of reasons. Like you fire the superstar quits, you couldn't keep legends at the end of the season, so that whole thing. But now, if you go, once you get to the select your champion screen, you can just hit confirm decision without selecting any champions, and all those belts start vacated, which is really cool, especially for me. I am a spectator type of person. I like to watch the matches, not all of them, but I like to watch the important ones, especially in GM mode. For me, it's kind of like me booking my own show sort of thing. So I really like to see those title matches, and I really like to have the ability to compete for the first ever champion, and you can do that in this. My next pro is the promo options. They have added a bunch more promo options, which is really, really nice. Those promo options are, number 1, you can have a tag team call out promo. Finally, we have been asking for this for 2 seasons. Tag team rivalries were so hard to deal with because in 2K22 you couldn't end any rivalries unless it was a pay-per-view, period. So if your wrestler got vetoed, you were just stuck with a stale rivalry for another month. Then in 2K23 they introduced the submission match, which allowed you to blow off rivalries, like end them at lower levels with a submission match, but that's only for singles. So you could never blow off a tag team rivalry. They switched it all around, so steel cages now end any rivalries involved in the match, period. Fatal 4-way, triple threat, one-on-one, tag team, whatever you want to do, steel cages, end rivalries. That's great. We can now blow those off, but in addition to that, we never had a tag team promo call-out, so you had to just keep putting them in matches and hoping the rivalry would pop. Now you can actually initiate that rivalry with a tag team call out, which I love. I think it has made it so much better. I'm a huge tag team wrestling fan. I would actually say I usually enjoy tag team wrestling more than singles wrestling. So this is huge for me, and I was very excited to see more love given to the tag team divisions in this. My next big one is the perk system. The perk system all factors off of the in-ring system, which we're going to talk about that both in the pros and the cons quite a bit, because I love that these wrestlers level up now. They stay with you and they retain their value even if they go to a different show and come back. It really makes you feel connected to your wrestlers. It makes you feel connected to the characters that you have, which it's the big name of the game in 2K24, is making you feel more like the wrestlers are people than just disposable whatevers. In 2K23, it was a viable strategy to just book a wrestler till he got injured, drop him, like fire him, and then bring another wrestler in. With this, it's not so much, because you're building those in-ring levels, so you can't just cycle through your wrestlers, because other companies will get the higher levels and you'll just always be stuck at these lower levels. So it connects you much more to the wrestlers in your game, which is another thing about talent scouts, which we'll talk about a little bit in cons as well. But the talent scouts the same way. Instead of these huge pools so you can make these snap judgment decisions, you really have to think about whether you want to bring somebody on, whether it's worth it to bring somebody on, whether you have the money to bring somebody on. And you really have to consider that person and what they're going to bring to the brand. And I think that is really genius. It does take away some of the cool things of the last one, but all for good reason, I think. I think this makes a more authentic experience than kind of what the last two did. But the perk system is great. I love the fact that these characters level up, they get these perks, and you have some control over what you select with them too, which again even more bonds you to the wrestler. Next pro, spectate all matches, but matches that have interference. So you still can't spectate matches if you book them with a run-in of any sort, which is a little annoying, but I understand why that is that way. However, in last year's game, you could not spectate backstage brawl matches. It just was not allowed, which was kind of crazy to me. So I was really curious as to how much you'd be able to spectate in this. I can confirm that you can spectate, especially with the addition of the special guest referee matches. I can confirm you can spectate backstage brawl matches, and you can spectate special guest referee matches. I have not gotten to try to spectate a casket or a no holds barred or any of the other new matches like the ambulance match, but I'm going to assume you can spectate those as well. So I think that you can spectate all the matches as long as there is no outside interference, which is great, especially for me, a guy who likes to watch, especially now that they've added 4 people to the backstage brawl, which I'm really excited for that. DQ and simulation is my next pro, and it is a complex one because it definitely changes how you look at things. But if you book a run-in now, the person gets a win via DQ, which means that titles don't change hands, which is really crazy to me. That wasn't the way it was before. If you booked in a run-in, you were almost booking the person not targeted by the run-in to win, whereas now it's a match DQ. And it actually records and looks at the DQ. Now, I don't know if it will if I was spectating, but in the run-in situation, I had booked a match between 2 people for the tag team, 4 people for the tag team championships. I booked a run-in on the people who were not the champions. Those people won the match, which confused me because I'm like, why there was a run-in? And then all of a sudden I find out that the other people still have the titles, which is great. It wasn't like this in the first game or the last 2 games, which is cool. Unfortunately, it kind of makes your brain, which has been trained to do one thing, have to do kind of some mental hula hoops, but it is more realistic and more authentic to the wrestling experience, which I really like. And then my last one is the veto cards during the PLEs have been scaled back immensely. So there are still some special cards that allow you to veto certain wrestlers at PLEs, pay-per-views, whereas a lot of the cards that you would save up to do this to other people, or the other people would save up to do it to you, like veto your 9 out of 9, veto a champion, those kind of cards, they can no longer be played at PLEs. Trust me, I tried. And I think this is great. This was a huge problem, especially when you're playing on hard mode, because you build these huge WrestleMania matches, and then somebody would veto your main number one contender or your champion, and it would just ruin your entire year. And I get it. It is a competition, and that's the breaks. But at the same time, if you're spectating and you're booking, you want to see the matches too. Aside from whether you win or lose, you want to see it. You booked it up. So this is really cool. I think this is really good. You'll have to use those veto cards strategically a little bit more during the weeks leading up to the PLEs instead of the PLEs, and they've just scaled that back a lot, which I really appreciate. So, let's get to the cons. There are some cons. I have some cons. Number one, I want to talk about the community creation system. Look, I keep hearing that they're going to fix it. They haven't as of the course of this recording, so I have to talk about it. Going into community creations is a nightmare right now, at least on Steam, on PC. I have been soft locked in the menu multiple times. There's other times it won't even start. There's other times it crashed my game. There are tons of characters that when I go in and I hit the download button, it starts to download, it then just stops and won't tell me why, and it won't actually download the wrestler. I have gotten some wrestlers off the community creation, and they do all seem to work when I'm playing them in game, but still, this is really irritating. It's also going to factor into one of my really, really big problems with the game, with the GM mode specifically. We'll get to that in a second. But I really like to pull tons of wrestlers off the community creations and kind of fantasy book my stuff. I love to pull tons of AEW wrestlers, TNA wrestlers, MLW wrestlers. I'm a big wrestling fan, so I like to have those crazy dream matches and get them all set up in my world. I like to mess with the draft pool so that I can decide which ones are legends, which ones are not. Which, having a broken community system makes that nearly impossible. But that brings me to my big actual problem. There is absolutely no way to edit a wrestler's in-ring level other than putting them in matches and having them advance. And I know right off the bat you're like, well, that makes sense, but every created wrestler, period, starts at 0. Look, Jay White is not a 0 ring level, okay? Adam Cole is not a 0 ring level. Tommy Dreamer is not a 0 ring level, but when I bring them in, when I put them into the GM mode, they're a 0 ring level. There is no way to change it. You can change everything you could change last year. Popularity. You can change whether they're contract, active, or local, like I said before. You can change their starting heel status and the starting class status. You cannot change the ring level at all. And part of me gets it, because you could really cheese the game by just like going in and editing everything's ring level up to top. But if that's really what you want to play, why not let them do it anyway? Give them the free range. With this, there's just no way to get those outside community creations that represent legends and up their ring level so that it's realistic. So no matter how you do it, there is your community creations, no matter how good they should be, are going to start at that ring level 0. Now, I will say there's lots of ways to boost your ring XP. There's tons of schooled cards that pop that allow you to quick boost your stuff. There's also a training promo that allows you to up your levels and whatnot, give you experience points based on your promo success. So there's a lot of ways to up that experience. It's just a little bothersome to me that I can't bring in, Diamond Dallas Page at a higher level. I can't bring him in at a ring level 20. He should be, I can't bring those guys in at that level because they're not in the game. I had to find a community creation of them. My next one is the talent scouts. Okay, so this is a trick, because the talent scout is a catch-22, right? it's great. It connects you better to the wrestlers. It connects you better to how you experience the show and your talent. They're much less throwaway and more every talent on your roster is more cared about. And Talent Scouts goes right into that because you only get like 4 selections every time you search, no matter how big or small your search is. So it's a huge choice to bring somebody on. That being said, if you're playing an ECW brand and you want to bring RVD on right off the bat, it costs way too much money to search for that legend. And if you search for that legend, there is no guarantee that RVD will pop. You can't search for a specific wrestler. It is impossible. You can set the parameters of their ring level. You can set the parameters of their gender, their class, whether they are heel or face. And that'd be it, ladies and gentlemen. Then you just search for them, and then that's it. Whatever comes up is whatever you have the option to pick. So it is a catch-22. It is a double-edged sword, because if you're looking for those specific wrestlers, those big hit wrestlers, it's not like you just wait for them to pop in the 30 free agent pool or whatever. You have to search for them, and you only get like 3 options. Which, again, overall I like this. But at the same time, when I want a specific wrestler, it's not going to be there. Anybody who is a long-standing fan of this channel, on the GM mode side, I do a show weekly with Grandpa Gamer. We're still in 2K23. We're going to be in 2K23 for most of this year. Then we're going to switch over to this game. This creates a huge problem because a lot of our gaming is very specific on, Jeremy almost always picks up Shawn Michaels, Matt Hardy, and Shark Boy, which is a created wrestler. He's not going to be able to do that. It's impossible. It's going to be impossible for him to find those wrestlers unless somebody else finds him and brings him on and he can trade for him. There's no way. He's going to have to pick from the selections he gets, and that's going to be a little bit more difficult for him and even me at times, because there's definitely wrestlers I like to bring on. So again, I think overall it's a good change. I wouldn't change it for the world. I'm going to tell you right now, if you're a 2K23 player who's used to it being a certain way, this is going to kind of change the way you look at this game and play this game. Okay, final one, biggest con, no women's ECW champions. This is ridiculous. Look. The Attitude Era was when ECW was around, right? Attitude Era, WCW, ECW. Women's wrestling was in the toilet at this point in time. Women were brought on as mostly eye candy, which is wrong, completely wrong. Anybody who has listened to this channel for a really long time knows I'm all about equality when it comes to wrestling. But in the Attitude Era, women's wrestling just wasn't there. It wasn't apparent. It didn't start really getting a resurgence and actually getting credibility until 2000s and kind of more late 2000s. And that's a real shame, don't get me wrong. But we are in 2024. We do have good women's wrestling now. And for you to put ECW in here and say, well, there was no women's championships back then, so we're not going to do women's championships now, is silly. Because let's face it, even the great Paulie Heyman, he would be like, I would put women's wrestlers in there right now. I didn't do it before because it wasn't the thing and I didn't have the money for it. There's no way Paulie wouldn't book women's titles. There's so many ways around this. You could have had Paul Heyman go into the belt creator and design what the women's championship for ECW would have looked like. You could have just called him up on the phone and asked him what it would look like. You could have made them yourself, or you could take any number of women's championships that are in this game, because there are hundreds of designs, and just stick it as the ECW championship. And the accuracy thing kind of falls flat, because WCW never had women's tag team champions, but yet you can use the women's tag team championships for WCW. So the accuracy argument just falls flat. The biggest reason I hate this, though, is not even necessarily the equality argument. It's the fact that if you are playing ECW, and you win, you're going to, in the back of your mind, thinking, did I win because I didn't need to book women that much? And if you lose, you're going to be thinking to yourself, did I lose because I didn't have women's championships, so I wasn't forced to book women that much? And that is something that irritates me. If you don't have parity in a mode like this, in a competitive mode like this, if you don't have parity across the board, everybody's going to say that thing is either broken one way or the other. Let's give it parity, man. One thing that the ECW, the creative designers of GM Mode have said is that the title belts that you do have in ECW, which is all men's tag team, men's TV, and men's world championship, give you an additional 20. Like, they give you 20 popularity instead of 10 when you win them. Okay, but then again, that again speaks into, am I winning because of that, or am I losing because I'm not getting the other thing? Just give us parity. Drop that popularity bump back down to 10. Give us women's championships. There's no reason not to. There just isn't. Let's do it. Let's do it that way, okay? All right, that's it. That's it for this review. It has been an extended and long review because, guys, I love GM Mode. Just 2K23 alone, I had 176 hours in it. I never once touched the normal game. It was just GM Mode. So I'm planning on getting that with this. I think overall this is the best GM Mode has ever been. I think it's amazing, and I love it. I'm going to be playing it for... I might skip... I hope I could skip 2025, because they just keep making changes that bring me back. I wasn't going to get 24, and then they just made a bunch of changes that made me had to get it. So hopefully 2025 they don't make a ton of changes, because I want to be playing this for a couple of years. So did I get it right? Did I get it wrong? Let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, you can reach us on Facebook at OldManGamingDH, on Twitter at OldManGaming9. You can join our Discord, links in the description below. Influence this and all of our shows from there. So long as you keep watching and listening, we'll keep making them. We'll see you guys next year.